thoughts with which it was composed, feelings you put into it. It's like a child being born from your own womb, as it were. And you wouldn't go and tell a mother later, Acha, if you could have your child again, what genes would you edit and change? You just don't do it. So, out of loyalty and faithfulness to my book, that book is the book I've produced. It remains where it is. It remains what it is. And I would not tamper with it for love or for money.
You did put one political leader in one of your very recent books. In fact, you put him across 500 pages, which is your book called The Paradoxical Prime Minister, which came out just before the 2019 elections. And I have a theory here, just correct me if I'm wrong, that when the first BJP government came to power in 2014, you came out and said a few words of hope. That, hey, they've done well, maybe they have some plan, let's not be overtly critical. And that backfired very badly with everyone asking whether you're joining the BJP and your own party members being, rather angry with you. So this time around you thought, okay, let me be safe. Let me write 500 pages so that no one questions where your loyalties lie.
That's one way of looking at it. No, I think to begin with, those who question my loyalties haven't actually read what I wrote. They read the Times of India headline on a very motivated summary of what I've written, rather than the article itself, which is not that much long. The article was, if I remember right, in the Huffington Post. And it was headlined, "Is there a Modi 2.0? Question mark. And in that article I said, we all knew Modi as this guy, Gujarat 2002, all of that stuff, incendiary Hindutva rhetoric, all of that, but he has really seemed to have made an effort in the 2014 elections to project a non-divisive, non-communal message. As soon as he was elected, he made these speeches saying he would be Prime Minister of all Indians, including those who didn't vote for him, that he wanted development and not division and all of this stuff. So I said, is there a Modi 2.0? It is too early to tell. I said, it was not put in the article. I said, however, we must respect the judgment of the voters who've given him a chance to prove that he can indeed be this and not that. So that was the thrust of my piece. I at no stage implied any shifting of loyalty. But by the time the article had been summarized in an incendiary and I think frankly malicious way in one newspaper, and the headline was even worse, and that was all that people read, it was enough for people to jump on me, and that's usually the way in Indian politics. It's bad enough that politicians don't write, but it's much worse that politicians don't read. So since they don't read, they don't know what they're attacking, because they're only attacking on the basis of hearsay or second-hand information.
Hey. We come to your latest book, and you have been writing almost one book a year, so it's been a lot of reading and very pleasurable reading at that. So
this one I had up, it's with the co-author Samir Saran.
Yes, with Samir Saran. And here you make the argument that India has a major role to play in the regimes of the future. And two of the arguments that you give is because of India's economic clout and because of our multicultural polity. I just want to take a moment and ask you, what economy?
And what
multiculturalism?
So the thing is that obviously, those of you who know my earlier work on the subject, Pax Indica, India and the World of the 21st Century, which I'm pleased to say is still steadily selling 8 years after it was published. In that book, I studied India's foreign policy around the world, and I came to the conclusion that we were punching below our weight, that we could do much more, and that we had the ability, the traditions, the resources, the capacity to be an influential player in world affairs. So, when I wrote this book, we started at the opposite end, that is not from studying Indian policy, but from studying global governance. And having studied global governance, came around to the same point, that one of the countries that would really make a very major difference in the way the globe is run is actually India, because India is all of these things. Now, if you ask me today, is it going to be this India, the India that we have seen in the 8 months since Narendra Modi came back to power? The answer very clearly is no. Because the India that I was writing about the India that I cherished and still vaguely hoped this government would not destroy, was an India which was an outstanding example to the world of the successful management of astonishing diversity, an India which in many ways had persuaded the world, actually without even trying to persuade, that its way of doing things, though arguably less efficient and therefore less numerically successful than the Chinese way, was actually a better way, a more humane way, and one that developed people and pulled them out of poverty without dividing them, punishing them, arresting them, throwing them in jail, denying them freedom of speech and all of those things. And so the Indian model, the India that I was describing, was an India that was fit to step forward to the world and say, listen, with all modesty, we think we are pretty much qualified to have a place in the high table. The truth is that in international geopolitics, the so-called rising powers are trying to get a place in the high table, but the previously risen powers are not about to make room for them. So this book is about the reluctance of these powers that are sitting like this to move their elbows in closer and make room for other countries to come in. And in geopolitics, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And the fact is that India, like many other countries, has felt for some time that we have been eaten for somebody else's lunch. It's time that we assert, I feel we should assert ourselves a bit more. We should go from being mere rule takers, as we have been since 1947, to rule makers on the international stage. And for all of that, we have the credentials. We have, for example, the technology, the human resources, the brains, and the necessary money to be able to help set global rules on everything from outer space to cyberspace. It's not that we are unfit, unequipped, or unprepared to do that. But we don't actually, we're not bold enough to step up and say we can or we will or we'd like to try. And that's one of the reasons that I've written what I have written. But certainly, I think that the world as a whole is looking askance at today's India and therefore is less likely to be thrilled about taking ideas or leadership in any meaningful way from a government that is at the moment being roundly condemned in every editorial in every Western newspaper, is being criticized at various levels internationally. They're going to find it much more difficult to be a credible voice.
One of the other arguments that you have in this book, you mentioned technology, and you say that, and you mentioned that technology will be one of the important drivers of change and also a disruptor. And you mentioned Google, Alibaba, Facebook. You talk about how unsafe our data is. But at the same time, I wanted to ask you that possibly the only tool of popular movements like the anti-CAA movements across the country is technology, is social media, because clearly mainstream media is not doing its job as it should. So,
is that why you left mainstream media?
Well, let's not get into that. We're still friendly. I have still friends here.
Okay. No, I mean the answer is not a simple one because the world is evolving very rapidly. When I first wrote about this phenomenon in my book, The Elephant, the Tiger and the Cell Phone, back in 2007, I think we had barely something like 15 million people in India who had access to the internet. And even then I thought that was a big thing and it was coming and so on. Today, thanks to mobile phones being so ubiquitous, and of course the lower expense of connecting to the internet on these phones, we're now looking at something like 800 million people or 750 million people who have access to the internet. So the country has been moving at an incredibly rapid pace. In 2009, I was practically the only election candidate on social media. In 2014, it was much more widespread when Mr. Modi won. Well, he overtook me in 2013 as the most followed Indian politician on Twitter. In 2014, he instructed every member of his cabinet, you must have a social media account, you must have a Twitter account, and you must tweet. And there are people who perhaps had never owned a smartphone in their lives who are busy hiring people to tweet for them. So there has been a significant change. And this is something which inevitably has altered one aspect of the nature of our politics. But will social media determine the outcome of an election? Still too early to tell. I think certainly it has more of an impact than it did, say, 2 elections ago and even 1 election ago. But it probably will have more impact in the next election. Because, you know, in the West, and say in America, you don't even need now to have any other conventional means of summoning a rally. You issue a tweet, as Obama did, for example, when he started doing this first. I will be addressing the crowds at such and such place and date and time. And that social media information is enough and the people will come. In India, we still need all the traditional methods also. So we still need your banners, your posters, your jeeps with megaphones, your rallies, your makeshift stages on the sidewalk. All of these things are still indispensable. The celebrity politics, the star campaigners visiting, all of that are still indispensable to bringing out the vote. Social media alone, no one's going to win an election on social media alone. But social media sets the agenda. Social media in many ways persuades people to buy into a certain perception of a party or a political belief or a political ideology. And all of that in turn influences how they will vote. So it's certainly a significant factor.
Coming to the CAA protest movements across the country, Kerala, where your constituency is situated, has taken a leadership role in opposing CAA. It was the assembly was the first to pass a resolution against its adoption, and then it was followed by many states like Bengal, Punjab, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh. Being a student of politics and international relations, what I've seen is that the southern states of India have not always sort of shaped the national narrative. Is that tide turning, do you think?
You know, the national narrative has actually increasingly become a Hindi-speaking narrative from northern India. And it's reinforced by the fact that the heavy presence of the so-called mainstream media is in the north, and particularly in Delhi. That the audiences, for example, for Hindi channels that are predominantly active in the so-called Bimaru states, Bihar, UP, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, the audiences dwarf the audiences in any regional language. So whether it's Bangla, Malayalam or anything else, you may have thoughtful and effective commentary. But the idiom of Indian politics has now overwhelmingly moved to the land of Aryavarta. And therefore, what passes for a national narrative will, I'm afraid, more and more, not less and less, be their narrative. When an incident happens in any of those places, it will capture the nation's attention through the media, but also through the political class, in ways that a comparable incident in a southern state will not. So the old line about, when Bengal catches a cold, the rest of India sneezes, is simply no longer true. We have to admit it, even though I love Bengal. The truth is that now when North India catches a cold, it is Bengal and Kerala and all the rest of us who are sneezing, because it's their cold that's infecting us. That's a stark reality. And you can see it in something as trivial as the fact that we used to have a convention in Parliament that when a minister is bilingual, if he gets a question in English, he'll answer in English. If he gets a question in Hindi, he'll answer in Hindi. Nowadays, the BJP ministers make it a point that even if you ask them a question in English, they will answer in Hindi. Because for them, the audience, their votes, their messaging is all in the Hindi belt. Now, this is actually, you ask about whether the South can help shape the national narrative. There is an even bigger danger lurking for the South. Because what happened was back in 76, Indira Gandhi passed a constitutional amendment freezing Lok Sabha representation at the 1971 census. And she made it valid for 25 years. And her logic was that the southern states have actually followed national policy, human development, curbing population growth, educating women, empowering women, and thereby reducing birth of children, etc. Why should they be punished by losing political power for doing well when those states that have failed to curb their populations, educate or empower their women, reduce their social practice, etc., why should they gain? Now, this lasted for 25 years, and in 2001, Atal Bihari Vajpayee's government, without a debate, unanimously passed it for another 25 years. That expires in 2026. In the meantime, the BJP has realized what a bonanza awaits them. Because if in 2026 this is allowed to lapse, and the Lok Sabha seats are apportioned once again on the basis of the 2021 census, and by the way, that's going to be the first census in India where an Indian state loses population from the previous census, and that's my state. Kerala will have fewer people in 2021 than in 2011. When that happens, the South will lose something like 40 Lok Sabha seats that will migrate to the North. Which means two things. First of all, the South will feel disempowered, unable to have an impact on national politics, but the North will be able to pass constitutional amendments with impunity. And in other words, the South and the Northeast already, but the South and the Northeast will be irrelevant to any changes that the North wants to bring about. This has already begun to set some alarm bells off in the minds of many people. A few days ago, I tweeted a number of links to articles I've written a couple of years ago warning about this. And the reason I had to warn about it was because the government already prefigured their intention when they actually gave the terms of reference to the new Finance Commission by telling the Finance Commission to heed the most recent census and not the 71 census. As a result of which all the southern states have lost dramatic amounts of money from the Finance Commission. Kerala lost 27% of central funds that it used to get the previous time. So you're seeing a particular crisis looming in the North-South narrative that it requires statesmanship, but may actually at this point be being handled by people who are seeing short-term political advantage in the ascendancy of the Hindi-speaking North.
Well, let's have some, pleasanter thoughts at the moment. Congratulations on the Sahitya Academy Award for an era of darkness. And you have spoken about the book and how you were surprised that so many Indians didn't know about this and how that your Oxford Union speech became a book. And you've also said that maybe the 100th year of the Jallianwala Bagh tragedy would have been a good time for the British to tender an apology. That date, 13th April 2019, came and went. There was no official apology. What next?
Well, it's interesting. When I first made that call, and by the way, the British edition was doing quite well and even reached a couple of the bestseller lists in Britain. And they gave it a ruder title. They called it Inglorious Empire, What the British Did to India. So that when I was out there talking about that book, getting interviews, readings and so on, I made the same appeal for an apology, and it was 2 years in advance of the centenary, so I gave them plenty of warning. That's how very, very senior and prominent told me privately, listen, the problem is your demand may be reasonable, but if we apologize to you lot, we'll have to go around apologizing in 100 other countries. So I don't think it's going to happen here. Then the same individual actually changed his mind and decided to support my request and urged London to think about it. And that's why we had the statement by the Prime Minister Theresa May on that date, but it fell a long way short of an apology. She expressed, I think, something like regret. She never said sorry, she never said apology, she never took responsibility for what happened. But she marked that particular moment with a milder expression of regret in the House of Commons. Now, I think that's as far as a British politician will be able to go, because they're always worried about whether they lose the chauvinist vote or the right-wing conservative vote if they apologize. A Labour PM might be different, but a Labour PM seems farther away than a Congress PM right now. So I don't want to count on that. What I think I would suggest is that a member of the royal family, in fact, before they got rid of the Sussexes, imagine Meghan Markle could have come and bowed down in Jallianwala Bagh as the former Archbishop of Canterbury did. And that would have cost them less, and since in any case, everything was done in the name of the Crown, a member of the royal family apologizing, I thought, would have had no political consequences to worry about, but could have actually conveyed the message well. Anyway, it's water under the bridge. At least that moment, my only answer would be it's never too late to apologize. Whenever they can summon up the moral courage to say sorry, we should be prepared to hear it.
Coming to your personal ties with this city, you went to high school at St. Xavier's here, and you keep coming back to Kolkata. So tell us one way Calcutta has changed for the better and one way for the worse.
I think that obviously one way in which it's changed for the better is there is much more visible prosperity around. I can tell you I was full-time in Calcutta, 69 to 71 when I was in high school. And literally, I remember in the entire 3 years, there was only one new building built. I mean, the economy was in such bad shape, there was such stagnation. I think it was the Charity International Centre that came up. Literally, there was no other building. Today, every time I come, there's some new building springing up somewhere, some mall is coming up, construction is going on. There is money in the city. That prosperity always well, and one sign of it is the way in which they've been able to spruce up some of the buildings. I never realized that the Indian Museum was a white marble building until they cleaned it up. Now, when I was a kid, it was so covered in generations of grey and dust and soot. I had no idea there was white underneath. And now that they finally scrubbed it and cleaned it up, it's sparkling. I think, wow, what a great building, but I didn't know that, right? Living in Kolkata, I was unaware of that, so that's one good sign. And I'm hoping there'll be more. I gather Town Hall has been renovated, Migrated Building is going to be renovated. I think we should be proud of all the lovely legacies of the city. But the other thing that you asked is what's worse. Paradoxically, at one point when Calcutta really went down the tubes in the late 60s, early 70s, you actually had a lot of business flights from here. A lot of companies shifted their headquarters in Calcutta, kept a shell headquarters here and moved their real operations somewhere else and so on. At that point, the city became actually more livable. I don't know who's around from those days. Traffic was less, things were a bit more manageable. Now it's all back to traffic jams and congestion and every inch. But some of that spark has gone. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember street theatre. People would perform Badal Shorkar on the streets. And people would just gather in a para and watch. That kind of stuff doesn't seem to be happening anymore. I don't live here full time, but I don't hear people talking about it. I don't hear it being said. And some of that City of Joy stuff was genuinely real. My mother was the wife of a Kerala newspaper executive who happened to be posted here. But she made it a point to volunteer for Mother Teresa in Shishugavan, and she worked there completely on her own time whenever she could find the time for years. So much so that when she came to visit me at the UN in Geneva, Mother Teresa asked her to look up 6 children who had been adopted from Calcutta by families that happened to be living in Geneva or near Geneva. And I took her out to meet them and to report back. There was a sense of tremendous shared compassion where everyone in the city, ordinary middle-class families, were sort of implicated in this adventure of caring for the destitute, the marginalized, the poor. Some of that seems to have gone out of the city as well. Forgive me if I'm wrong. I don't live here full-time anymore. I pick up impressions, I talk to people, but I hear much less of that sort of thing than I used to when I was growing up.
Okay, I think now we should open up the conversation for the audience.
Can I ask the first question?
Oh.
Please go ahead.
Can we use this occasion to launch the Bangla translation of your book, The Great Indian Novel?
Yes.
Because we have the book, we have the translator, and we have the publisher and the editor here.
Wonderful, I'd love to launch.
And we have you.
Wonderful, even better.
So, may I request